Good morning. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday. Yom Shishi. Let's light up the darkness. It is Erev Shabbos, and Shabbos is Erev Pesach. So lots going on this year. We have to do all our preparation for the Seder tomorrow night after Shabbos ends, but you can't prepare on Shabbos for the holiday that comes after, so we're doing that today. This morning I removed the last of the chametz from our house, right? Any kind of leavened bread, crumbs, etc. Specifically also the bits of challah. When Nina makes challah, every week she removes some of the dough. We put that aside. That's the challah offering, which we would have given to a priest if the temple were standing. Instead, she puts it aside. And then, like all the other guys in the neighborhood, we go to the chametz burning. Normally, after we burn the chametz, we would say, and any chametz that I have in my possession, I declare it null and ownerless. But we don't do that now because we keep aside just a little bit of chametz, and that's specifically some challah to eat tonight at Friday night dinner, because in honor of Shabbos, we want to have challah. Also for tomorrow morning's meal, normally that would be at midday, the Shabbos lunch, but we have to do that early because all the chametz eating has to be done within the morning, because tomorrow Shabbos is also Erev Pesach. So there's a lot of specialized laws that have to do when Pesach falls right after Shabbos. I think this won't happen again for another 20 years, and so we want to make the most of it while we're here. You were just, as always, the music at the beginning of AT Daily is Moshe Storch, and the chametz burning was at his house today. It was so nice. It was a musical chametz burning. He and a couple other guys were playing guitar and singing. It was quite beautiful. So I honor him and everybody who's in the midst of all the preparations. And so without further ado, let's get into it by welcoming everybody. Bill in mid-Missouri, Bella in Florida, Joe in the Inland Empire, Belle in Texas, Lorraine in Texas, Shandora in the Bronx, Sharon in New Jersey, Renee, Indiana, Melissa in Great Neck, Aoife in Florida, Chaim in Florida, Mickey in New Jersey, Ellen in Southern California. I know you guys, right? I don't even have to... Pretty much I remember everyone's names where you're from. Our daf today is page 102 here in Tractate Sanhedrin, still discussing Mishna number 1 in chapter 11. Generally, Olam Haba, what is the world to come, and who has a share in it? And today we're talking about specifically these kings who our Mishnah said don't have a share in the world to come. One was King Menashe that we've been talking about for a few days, who was a wicked king who atoned, but probably did not regain his place in the world to come because he caused the nation to sin so egregiously. We'll talk more about him today, and a very, very famous teaching that involves him. As well as Ahab, wicked King Ahab, the king who married Jezebel and was on a whole other level of wickedness even than Menashe. Okay, page 102, right near the top. Yesterday we were also talking about Yerovam. So Yerovam was this upstart king who rebelled against the monarchy in the wake of King Solomon's death, when his son Rehoboam ascended to the throne. It was absolutely unworthy and a foolish king, a very foolish successor to Solomon. In a sense, it was a punishment to Solomon because late in his life, he had so many wives. He allowed them to build idolatrous altars and temples in the land of Israel. Terrible, terrible sin. And so God says to Solomon, you are going to be punished for this. I'm going to remove the crown from your house, right? Remove the throne from your house, which is your father's house, the house of David, but I will not remove it utterly, right? And so what does that mean? It meant that the kingdom split. So Rehoboam remained king over Judea, the southern kingdom, and this guy Yerovam created the northern kingdom. So we'll talk a little bit more about him. So the Gemara continues its discussion of Yerovam with regard, and Yerovam, by the way, was a servant of King Solomon, whom Solomon recognized as quite capable and smart, and elevated him above the other servants to, supervise some of the construction projects that King Solomon had. So the Gemara continues its discussion of Yerovam. With regard to that which is written, and the apostates are deep in slaughter, and I am rejected by them all. That's Hosea 5:2. About this, Rabbi Yochanan says that the Holy One, blessed be he, says, they issued decrees, right? This is God speaking. They issued decrees that are more profound and more extreme than my own. I said, this is God, anyone who does not ascend to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festival, Passover, Shavuos, Sukkot, violates a positive mitzvah, right? All the Jewish males are obligated when the temple is standing to go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year. And if they don't, they violate a positive commandment. And they said, right, so now God is saying, but the decrees of these humans is harsher than God's own decrees. In what way? Right, so God says, if you don't ascend to Jerusalem, you violate a positive mitzvah. And they said, this is speaking about Yerovam, anyone who ascends to Jerusalem for the pilgrimage festival will be stabbed with the sword. So in that way, Yerovam successfully prevented the residents of the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, from ascending to Jerusalem. The verse states, and it came to pass at that time, and Yerovam left Jerusalem, and the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him on the way, and he was clad in a new garment, and the two were alone in the field. Now this is before Yerovam became the king, before he challenged the authority of Rehoboam, the successor to Solomon. This is while Solomon was still alive, right? So when Yerovam had sort of been elevated to a position of prominence, and then he was calling out Solomon and saying, what are you doing, right? What are you doing, King Solomon? You've gone astray. So at this point, Yerovam was acting in the name of Israel, was a hero of Israel, speaking truth to power. Problem is, when you speak truth to power and you acquire power, it's possible that power will corrupt you. And that's what ended up happening to Yerovam. So this is at the beginning of that process. When he receives a prophecy that he will become a king in Israel. That's what's happening here. And it came to pass at that time, and Yerovam left Jerusalem, and the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him on the way, and he was clad in a new garment. And the two were alone in the field. That's 1 Kings 11:29. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yosei. The phrase "at that time" indicates that it is a time ordained for calamity. In other words, these were the seeds of the whole story that became the splitting of Israel, the land of Israel, into 2 kingdoms, Judea and Israel. And this is because this prophet, Ahijah, tells Yerovam that you are destined for greatness. And he basically, this garment that he's wearing, I think he cuts it into 12 pieces and gives Yerovam 10. Right? And so the idea is you're going to have the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, and Rehoboam, because of the love that God had for King David, and at least the promising early years of Solomon, that God said, I will not take the scepter away from the house of Judah. I will not take the scepter away from the house of David specifically. They would not lose the kingdom utterly. Judea would survive, and in fact, Judea would outlast the northern kingdom, which would fall quite a bit earlier to Assyria. So again, this is the outset of this process. So what they're saying is when this prophet told Yerovam that he would rule, this was the beginning of that calamity. So the verse states, at the time of their punishment they shall perish, from Jeremiah 51:18. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. The phrase, at the time, indicates that it is a time ordained for calamity. Right, Jeremiah prophesying that the first temple would fall to Nebuchadnezzar. The verse states, in an acceptable time have I answered you, Isaiah 49:8. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. The phrase, in an acceptable time, indicates that it is a time ordained for good. The verse states, on the day when I punish, I will punish their sin upon them. Exodus 32:34. It was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. The phrase, on the day when I punish, indicates that it is a time ordained for calamity. The verse states, and it came to pass at that time, and Judah descended from his brothers. Genesis 38:18. This was the affair of Judah and Timnah. Judah. What was her name? Was it Tim? No, it's not Timnah. I'm spacing. But this was the affair that led actually to the creation of the house of David through his daughter-in-law. But there was a lot of trouble to go through before that. It was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. The phrase at that time indicates that it was a time ordained for calamity. The verse states, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel came to Shechem to make him king. So now we're talking about the calamity that happens in the wake of Solomon's death. And this is where Rehoboam is going to ascend to the throne. He is the successor to Solomon. And as I mentioned yesterday, right, the older sages said to him, listen, you have a wonderful opportunity here. Your father was, really pushing the people hard, enslaving some of them, taxing them heavily in order to fund and, be the engine of construction for his big construction projects. You need to back off. The people don't know you. What you should do is just, slow down this construction, lower the tax on the people, stop conscripting them into that labor, and the people will love you and serve you forever. But he didn't listen to them. Instead, he listened to his young friends, the friends of his youth, which now became his advisors as king. And they said to him, listen, if your father had a heavy hand and that was his thumb, so you rule with a heavy hand, right? If that was the hand, you rule with a heavy arm. He says, my father flogged you with whips. I will flog you with scorpions. You must be much tougher to show that you're a tough king. Terrible advice that led to the splitting of the kingdom. All that went down in Shechem. Why is Shechem a memorable place? That's the city where the whole story of Dinah happened when she was raped by the prince of Shechem. Ended up, leading to the whole affair with Shimon and Levi, slaughtering all the residents of that city, taking the women and children as slaves, leaving a ghost town. They definitely protected and defended the honor of their sister Dinah, but their father Jacob was furious, saying that this was an overreaction that will lead to being hated by all the surrounding nations who he thought might attack them. They didn't attack. Those people became afraid of Jacob's tribe. But Jacob didn't forget, and he scolded and rebuked Shimon and Levi even on his own deathbed. That all happened in Shechem. Now the verse states, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel came to Shechem to make him king. That's 1 Kings 12:1. And it was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Shechem is a place ordained for calamity. In Shechem, they tormented and raped Dinah. In the outskirts of Shechem, the brothers sold Joseph. And in Shechem, the kingdom of the house of David was divided. Not a happy place. I believe Shechem now is, a city called Ramallah. With regard to the verse which states, and Yerovam left Jerusalem, 1 Kings 11:29, Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa says it means that he left the destiny of Jerusalem, meaning he removed himself from the category of the residents of Jerusalem, never to return, because Yerovam established that northern kingdom with himself on the throne. The verse states, and the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him on the way, and he was clad in a new garment, a chadasha, and the two were alone in the field. So what is taught by the phrase, in a new garment? And Rav Nachman says it was like a new garment, just as a new garment has no imperfection, so too the Torah studies of Yerovam at that time had no imperfection. Alternatively, a new garment teaches that they introduced shechidishu, matters that no ear had ever heard. Right? So Yerovam, when he was speaking truth to power, he was coming from a place of knowledge and wisdom. He had a lot of Torah learning. And yet, right, when he challenged Solomon and then eventually challenged his son Rehoboam, what did he do? He installed himself as a king and then ended up becoming a terrible, terrible sinner, leading the nation astray. As you can see, we're jumping back and forth in time. Much easier for the sages to do that because they had the entire Bible, the entire Mishna, and eventually the entire Gemara memorized. So for them, it's just very easy to jump back and forth as they're tying verses to each other. And chronology was not very important in the sense of the ability to, hold and compare verses from the story. What is taught by the phrase, and the two were alone in the field? Right? This is that moment when the prophet tells Yerovam that you're going to be a king. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says it teaches that all the Torah scholars of that generation seemed, relative to them, to Yerovam and the prophet Ahijah, like grass of the field, as these two were wiser than all the Torah scholars of that generation. I was the wisest of the generation who got it so wrong. And there are those who say it teaches that all the rationales of the Torah were revealed to them like a field that is exposed for all to see. And the verse states, therefore shall you give parting gifts to Moreshes Gas. The houses of Achzib are a deceitful thing for the kings of Israel. That's from Micah 1:14. So Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa says, when they crowned Yerovam, a divine voice emerged that said to the subjects of the kingdom of Israel, he who killed the Philistine, that's David, and bequeathed the city of Gas to you, King David, will give you parting gifts. Will you give parting gifts to his sons and revolt against them? Ultimately, the houses of Achzib are a deceitful thing for the kings of Israel, as the kings of Israel will also be forsaken by their subjects, right? I love this term, parting gifts. Right, familiar to us in English as like, yeah, well, you competed on the game show, you didn't win anything, but we'll give you some lovely parting gifts. Here it's being used that, as they're creating that northern kingdom, they gave some parting gifts to Rehoboam and the leadership of the southern kingdom. But in their arrogance thought that they were going to create this new and wonderful thing, which of course ended up being a very sinful and wrong kingdom that did not survive as long as the southern kingdom. Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa says, now why are we learning this right now? Because we just learned the teaching of Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa about these parting gifts, and having mentioned him, we're now going to cite another teaching in the name of Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa, which is a famous and super important teaching that we first heard in Tractate Brachos when we began our journey through the Talmud 5 years ago. Rabbi Hanina Bar Papa says, with regard to anyone who derives benefit from this world without reciting a blessing, it is as though he stole from the Holy One, blessed be he, and the congregation of Israel, as it is stated, whoever robs his father and his mother and says it is no transgression, he is the companion of a corrupter. Proverbs 28:24. Right? It helps us to remember, like sometimes we're in a hurry and we're not focused and we don't, formulate a proper intent, and we take that first bite of the food and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't say a blessing, or we forget the blessing altogether, God forbid. When we eat anything in this world, when we enjoy anything in this world and don't utter a blessing, right, to bless and thank God for the opportunity to enjoy this thing from the world, it's like we're stealing. It's an amazing thing when you think about it, right? That God, who gives us everything, does not require payment, right? He gives it all to us freely. However, if we don't say please and thank you, so to speak, right? Blessed are you who gives us this, it's like stealing. And the term his father is referring to none other than the Holy One, blessed be he. As it is stated, is he not your father who created you, who made you and established you? Deuteronomy 32:6. And the term his mother is referring to none other than the congregation of Israel. As it is stated, hear my son, the discipline of your father, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother. Proverbs 1:8. So the mention of the Torah as emanating from the mother indicates that the mother represents the congregation of Israel, and the Torah of the mother is the tradition of the Jewish people. So if a Jew doesn't make a blessing before he eats something, but it's like stealing from our Father in heaven, and it's like despising the whole tradition of the Jewish people, which tells us that we have to say that blessing. What is the meaning of the phrase, he is the companion of a corrupter? It means he is a companion of Yerovam, the son of Nebat, who corrupted the people of Israel before their Father in heaven by sinning and causing others to sin. With regard to the verse, and Yerovam drove Israel from following the Lord and caused them to sin a great sin, 2 Kings 17:21, about this, Rabbi Hanin says, this is like two sticks that when they collide, cause each other to carom. As due to the strife, Yerovam caused the subjects of the kingdom of Israel to grow distant from God. But as we mentioned yesterday, in order to consolidate his power in the northern kingdom, he prevented the subjects of the northern kingdom, who were Jews, from going south and ascending to Jerusalem for Passover and Shavuos and Sukkot, and bringing offerings, because that would have, challenged his power. So he prevented them from fulfilling their obligation to go to Jerusalem. He gave them a substitute that was much worse than not going at all, which was he established a golden calf and an altar for them to bring their offerings, repeating the sin of the golden calf. Apropos the calves of Yerovam, the Gemara discusses the golden calf discussed in the Torah. So the verse states, and di zahav in Deuteronomy 1:1. So the school of Rabbi Yanai said, Moses said before, the Holy One, blessed be he, the master of the universe. Because of the gold and silver that you lavished upon the Jewish people during the exodus from Egypt until they said enough, die, right? Like Dayenu, we're going to sing tomorrow night. This wealth caused the Jewish people to fashion for themselves gods of gold. This seems like a slightly chutzpahdik statement for Moses to be making, but he's saying, as an advocate for the Jewish people, please God, don't destroy them for the sin of the golden calf. After all, you lavished all this silver and gold on them. Could you be so surprised when they used it in a bad way? Right? Be careful of having too much disposable wealth. The combination of wealth and leisure, right? They were no longer working once they left slavery in Egypt. They were waiting at the foot of the mountain while Moses was up at the top. They freaked out that Moses wasn't coming back, and they said, we need some kind of intermediary between us and God. We got all this gold around. Let's build some kind of a statue that will work in that manner, and that was the genesis of the golden calf. That combination of wealth and leisure left them open to a transgression. And there is a parable for this. A lion does not maul and roar over a basket of straw from which he derives no pleasure. Rather, he mauls and roars over a basket of meat, as he roars only when satiated. In other words, the guilt is not exclusively theirs. Again, a chutzpahdik thing for Moses to be saying to God. Rabbi Oshaya says, until Yerovam, Israel was suckling, i.e., suffering the consequences from worshiping one calf that they fashioned in the wilderness, the original golden calf. From that point forward, right after Yerovam created these two more golden calves for the northern kingdom and its residents to bring sacrifices, from that point forward, at least the residents of the northern kingdom were suckling from 2 and 3 calves. as Yerovam added the calves in Bethel and Dan to the sin of the original golden calf. So Rabbi Yitzchak says you have no punishment that comes to the world in which there is not 1/24th of the surplus of a litra of the first calf. What's he saying? When weighing a substance, there would often be a disparity of up to 1/24th of its weight, because they didn't have such accurate scales back then. So the point is that a minuscule portion of the sin of the golden calf is added to every punishment imposed upon the Jewish people. God was so angry at the nation that he had just rescued from slavery in Egypt and just given them the Torah and the Ten Commandments and feeding them manna and the spring, the miraculous spring in the desert, the clouds of glory, etc. And they built this golden calf. He wanted to destroy them all. And Moses advocated for the Jewish people and said, listen, you don't want it to be said that you brought us out here to destroy all of us. Because God was saying, I'll make a nation out of you, Moses. But Moses says, no. You got to preserve the Jewish people. And ultimately convinces God not to destroy the nation. But God destroyed all the people who were dancing around the calf. And said that there's going to be a vestige of this sin that adheres to the Jewish people always. So every time we sin in any kind of a way, in addition to the punishments that we'll receive for that sin, there'll be a little measure of punishment that's still being meted out to the Jewish people from the original sin of the golden calf. That's what he's saying here. There's a minuscule portion of the sin of the golden calf that is added to every punishment imposed upon the Jewish people, as it is stated, Exodus 32:34, on the day when I punish, I will punish their sin upon them. Right? So everything we get punished for, there's a little extra punishment because of the sin of the golden calf, indicating that atonement for that sin is incomplete and the Jewish people will continue to suffer for it. Rabbi Hanina says, after 24 generations elapsed from the sin of the golden calf, the debt referred to in this verse was collected. Okay, so it's a definitely ongoing punishment, but 24 generations later, it had been fulfilled. So please God, we should be more than 24 generations past the sin of the golden calf. I mean, it was about 3,300 years ago. So yeah, sounds about right. In other words, we should be past it. And we were even past it 1,500 years ago. Right here, 24 generations. Wait a minute. Yeah, 24 generations have elapsed. How do we know? As it is stated, and he cried in my ears with a loud voice, saying, those who have charge over the city draw near, every man with his deadly weapon in his hand. So this prophecy occurred 24 generations after the sin of the golden calf. Now, that's a long time ago. That was during Ezekiel. Now, the verse states, and after this matter, Yerovam returned not from his evil way. 1 Kings 13:33. And to what event is this verse alluding when it states after this matter? In other words, Yerovam had a chance to atone for the wickedness that he had done, and he did not. So Rabbi Abba says, it is after the Holy One, blessed be he, grabbed Yerovam by his garment, meaning he sent prophets and implored him and said to him, repent. And you and I and the son of Yishai, right, this would be Mashiach ben David, will stroll together in the Garden of Eden. Right? So in other words, God sent prophets to rebuke and scold Yerovam and say, listen, you ascended to that throne for a good reason, right, to challenge Rehoboam, who was going the wrong way. But then you became corrupted and you set up these, altars and golden calves, etc. Atone, repent for that. And then I'll restore to your greatness, and you will have, a place in the world to come, very high and lofty, alongside King David. Yerovam said to him, to God, who will walk in the lead? God said to Yerovam, the son of Yishai will take the lead. After all, David, whatever his sins may have been, were nothing like these sins. Yerovam said, if so, I do not wish to repent. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Bahu was accustomed to lecture. Okay, here's a very famous story. When we think about ourselves as hey, what's wrong with these people in our past? Now that we've been talking, the reason this is here is because we've been talking about the sins of the golden calf. And we would say to ourselves, what was wrong with our ancestors? They came out of Egypt, they received every blessing from God, and they set up a golden calf. Or they lived in the land of Israel, and there was so much plenty and such a beautiful system, and a national form of worship built around the Holy Temple. And still these people would turn to idolatry and bow to statues of silver and gold and wood and stone. What's wrong with these people? Right? And we just think of ourselves as so superior to them because we would never have been led astray like that. Right? I'm sure we've often thought something like that. Well, this story goes, again, addresses that thought process in ourselves. The Gemara relates, Rabbi Abahu was accustomed to lecture at great length about the three kings enumerated in the Mishna, who have no place in the world to come. Right? Menashe, and Ahijah and Yerovam. So Rabbi Abahu lectured at great length about these three kings who have no share in the world to come. He fell ill, and he undertook that he would not lecture about those kings. But once he recovered, he started lecturing again on this topic, 102b. So it even occurred to him that maybe, since they were kings of Israel, even though they were so wicked and they have no place in the world to come, maybe I shouldn't be so arrogant in lecturing about them. That maybe that's why I'm sick. But then he got better and he said, no, I got better. It has nothing to do with that. They were wicked kings, and he kept teaching about them in a very disparaging manner. His students said to him, did you not undertake that you will not lecture about them? Rabbi Abahu said, did they repent? That I would reconsider and refrain from condemning them for their actions? So one day, Rav Ashi ended his lecture just before reaching the matter of those three kings. And he said to his students, tomorrow we will begin the lecture with our colleagues, right? In other words, I'm going to teach you tomorrow about these three kings of Israel. But he referred to them in a very jocular way as our three colleagues, right? Our three colleagues, like on the level of commoners, that we know all about them and they're just wicked, and we're going to go into the nature and extent of their wickedness, right? But in a jocular way is how he spoke about them, who, although they were sinners, were Torah scholars like us, right? So he's calling them colleagues. Maybe what he's saying to them is, they were Torah scholars. So lest we ever think that we couldn't become sinners, we could. But nevertheless, he's speaking about kings of Israel, even though they've been dead for many centuries, in this, not giving them any honor at all, not according them any honor. Menashe, the king of Judea, came and appeared to Rav Ashi in his dream. Menashe said to him angrily, you called us your colleague and the colleagues of your father? How dare you characterize us as your equal? Menashe said to him, I will ask you, from where are you required to begin cutting a loaf of bread when reciting the blessing, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, right? The standard bread blessing we say before any meal, and particularly on Friday nights when we bring out the challah. So Menashe asks a very simple question. So when you say the blessing over bread, from where do you cut the piece that you then eat? Rav Ashi said to him, I do not know. Menashe said to him, even this, from where you are required to begin cutting a loaf of bread when reciting the blessing, who brings forth bread from the earth, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, you did not learn? And yet, you call us your colleague? You're saying that you're a Torah scholar like we were Torah scholars, and you don't even know where to begin cutting the bread? Rav Ashi said to Menashe, teach me this halacha, and tomorrow I will lecture and cite it in your name during my public lecture delivered on the festival, a very important public lecture. Menashe said to him, you cut the loaf from where it crusts as a result of baking. Now, we actually don't know exactly what that is, and according to some opinions, it means you cut the end, that is the favorable end. Some people say maybe it means the top. Some people say maybe it means the bottom. There are some people who will take a piece from the top, a piece from the bottom, a piece from the end in order to make sure that they've got this covered. We actually still don't know exactly what it means, but you certainly do want to take a piece of bread from what you consider to be the choicest part of the challah. Rav Ashi said to him, since you were so wise, what is the reason you engaged in avodah zarah, in idolatry? Since you were so wise and so learned as a Torah scholar, and you knew laws that even I don't know, one of the great Torah scholars of the existing generation, why did you become an idolater? Why did you chase after idols? And then here is the line that is so famous. Menashe said to him, had you been there at that time, you would have taken and lifted the hem of your cloak and run after me due to the fierce desire to engage in idol worship and due to the fact that it was a common faith, right? You would have run after the idols. You would have run, not walked. Okay? And that's all he says. But we're meant to understand that idolatry in the ancient world, it was so ubiquitous, it was so common, it was so ingrained in the lives and the texture and the society and the culture of the world, of the whole world at that time, that you cannot underestimate the achievement of Abraham, who came to realize that it was all false, and formed a relationship with God, and God reciprocated, and then Abraham became the father of our people, and then he was able to transmit that commitment to the one God to his son Isaac, and Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob to the 12 tribes, and just the whole people, right? The Hebrews, the Jewish nation, Am Yisrael, the children of Israel, to come into the world and create a nation and a culture and a system under Torah, and the knowledge and praise and thanksgiving and elevation of the one God in the world. You cannot underestimate what that was in the world. And so even within that world and that system and that nation, that successful nation, the allure, the temptation to fall away from that elevated status in relationship with God and to pursue idolatry like the rest of the world, was such a strong draw that Menashe was saying to Rav Ashi, who's one of the two editors of the Talmud, if you had lived in that time, you would have run, not walked. You would have hiked up your skirt, right? I mean, the kinds of clothing that they had then, they didn't have pants, right? So they would have drawn up your cloak so you could run faster after idolatry. And we should believe Menashe when he says that. And the people who overcame, all the people who overcame that seduction of idolatry accomplished something incredible. Now, eventually, this desire for idolatry fell away from the Jewish people and from most of the world, thank God. But this idea that we can be lured after, seduced by whatever's going on in the culture and the prevailing belief system, which is diametrically different than our own, don't underestimate the power of that. And today, right, the equivalent is not, bowing to idols, but perhaps chasing after hedonism, secularism, skepticism, wicked skepticism, not rational skepticism, or just the arrogance of people who are forwarding a hypothesis that may or may not be true, but look at it as truth. I mean, just the whole academic system as it's practiced has really gotten away from the search for truth to promoting an agenda and being sucked into that. Don't underestimate its power. Have I made it clear that I feel strongly about this? Okay. Again, Menashe said to him, had you been there at that time, you would have lifted the hem of your cloak and run after me, chasing after these idols. And the next day, Rav Ashi said to the sages, as a prelude to his lecture, We will begin with the treatment of our teachers, right? Not our colleagues. Those kings who were greater than us in Torah knowledge, but whose sins caused them to lose their share in the world to come. Okay, new subject. We are well into page 102b. So the Gemara proceeds to discuss the second king enumerated in the Mishnah, Ahab, or Achav. So although he was a brother, Ach, to heaven, right? Our father in heaven. So a father is Av. So Achav means brother to father, right? So in other words, Achav was a gifted Torah scholar who had a chance to lift the nation tremendous holiness in that northern kingdom. What did he do? He did whatever the sins of Yerovam were, and he just went way past, shot past Yerovam in his sinfulness and leading that northern kingdom to bow to idolatry. Eventually had the fierce conflict with Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, because he was leading the nation to worship the Baal, a very false god. Achav, although he was a brother, Ach, to heaven, he was a father, Av, for idol worship. He was a brother to heaven, as it is written, and a brother is born for adversity, Proverbs 17. And he was a father for idolatry. This is the highest level of attachment, as it is written, as a father has compassion for his children, so was Achav, drawn to, like he was in love with idolatry, the way a father loves his child. With regard to Achav, it is written, and it came to pass, the most minor of his transgressions was his walking in the sins of Yerovam, son of Nevat. Rabbi Yochanan says the minor sins that Achav performed were on a par with the major sins that Yerovam performed, as the transgressions committed by Achav were much more serious than those committed by Yerovam. And for what reason did the verse attribute the sins of all the kings of Israel to Yerovam, even though the sins of Achav were more substantial? It is due to the fact that he was first to engage in iniquity. And with regard to the verse, their altars shall also be like droppings in the furrows of the field, Rabbi Yochanan says, you do not have even one furrow in Eretz Yisrael upon which Achav did not place an object of idol worship and bow to it. And the Gemara asks, and from where do we derive that Achav does not enter into the world to come? And the Gemara answers, it is derived as it is written, and I will excise from Achav every man, and him that is shut up, and him that is abandoned in Israel. Him that is shut up indicates he will be excised in this world, and him that is abandoned indicates that he will be excised from the world to come. Rabbi Yochanan says, for what virtue was Omri, the king of Israel, who was Achav's father, privileged to ascend to the monarchy? It is due to the fact that he added one city in Eretz Yisrael, as it is stated, and he bought the hill of Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and built on the hill, and called the name of the city that he built after Shemer, the owner of the hill, Samaria. Rabbi Yochanan says, for what virtue was Achav privileged to ascend to the monarchy and rule for 22 years? After all, he was such a wicked king. Why did he ever have an opportunity to become a ruler? It is due to the fact that he respected the Torah, which was given with 22 letters. As it is stated, and he sent messengers to Achav, king of Israel, into the city, and said to him, so says Ben-Hadad. Ben-Hadad was a foreign king in Syria, who was exerting pressure on the northern kingdom and demanding tribute. And Achav gave it to him, said, please don't come and conquer us. We'll do whatever you want. Your silver, says Ben-Hadad, this foreign king, your silver and your gold are mine, your wives and also your good children are mine. And Achav, the king of Israel, answered and said, it is according to your saying, my lord, O king, I am yours and all that I have. And the messengers came again and said, so speaks Ben-Hadad, saying, I sent to you, saying, you shall deliver me your silver and your gold and your wives and your children. Yet I will send my servants to you tomorrow about this time, and they shall search your house and the houses of your servants. And it shall be that they shall put in their hand all the delight of your eyes and take it. And he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, tell my lord the king, all that you did send for to your servant at the first I will do, but this thing I may not do. So I will give you all the gold and silver of Israel, and my wives and my children. But this one last thing that you asked for, I will not give you. So what is that? So the Gemara asks, what is the delight of your eyes that Achav refused to give Ben-Hadad after agreeing to give him his wives and his gold? Is it not a Torah scroll? Achav treated the Torah with deference, at least early in his career. So the Gemara suggests perhaps the delight of his eyes was an object of idol worship. And the Gemara answers, that could not enter your mind, as it is written that Achav consulted the sages with regard to this matter. And all the elders and all the people said to him, do not consent and heed not. So the elders in this verse are presumably the sages. And the Gemara continues, but perhaps they were wicked elders who worshipped idols. Isn't it written? And the saying pleased Absalom well and all the elders of Israel. Right, in the rebellion against King David, there were so-called elders who, gave advice for wickedness. And Rav Yosef says the elders of Israel mentioned in that verse were wicked elders. So perhaps the elders of Israel with whom Achav consulted were also wicked. But the Gemara rejects this idea. There, with regard to Absalom, it is not written and all the people, whereas here, with regard to Achav, it is written and all the people. As it is impossible that there were not among them righteous people. If the righteous people agreed, apparently the delight of your eyes was indeed sacred, and it is written, I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bent to the Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed it, from 1 Kings 19:18, indicating that there were righteous people in the northern kingdom. Rav Nachman says Achav was balanced in terms of the mitzvahs and transgressions that he performed. As it is stated, and the Lord said, who shall entice Achav that he may ascend and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And this one said in this manner, and that one said in that manner, indicating that it is unclear whether or not he was a full-fledged sinner. So Rav Yosef objects to this statement. This is the person about whom the prophet wrote, but there was none like Achav, who devoted himself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord, whom Jezebel, his wife, had incited. Right? The most wicked person, or at least the most wicked king ever. And we learn in a Baraisa, every day she would weigh gold shekels equal to Achav's weight and give them to idol worship. And you may say he was balanced. He had no good deeds. So rather, Achav was generous with his money and he did not scrimp. And since he also benefited Torah scholars with his property, the heavenly court expiated him half of his sins for him, and the result was a balance between mitzvahs and transgressions. He had some good deeds, but you can't say that in any way his good deeds and his transgressions were balanced. It's that his good deeds attracted some mercy from heaven. With regard to God's search for a volunteer to entice Achav to, become the end of him, it is written, and there came forth a spirit and stood before the Lord and said, I will entice him. And the Lord said to him, with what? And he said, I will go out and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, you shall entice him and also prevail. Go out and do so. And the Gemara asks, what spirit was that? And Rabbi Yochanan says it was the spirit of Naboth the Jezreelite, who sought to take revenge against Achav. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the term go out that God instructed the spirit? And Ravina says that it means go out from within my partition and do not return. As so it is written, he that speaks falsehood shall not be established before my eyes. God said, who will volunteer to go and entice Achav, to his downfall? This spirit, that wanted to avenge something that had been done to an enemy of Achav, said, I will go in the form of the person I'm a spirit for. And God said, go. But you can't stay here because the way you're planning to entice him is with lies. The spirit that volunteered to lie may no longer be before God. Rav Papa says that this is in accordance with the adage that people say, one who avenges due to his zealotry destroys his own house. And the spirit of Naboth that sought revenge was expelled from before God. With regard to the verse, and Achav made the Asherah, right? The Asherah was another form of idolatry, based on a tree, and Achav did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. And Rabbi Yochanan says it means that he wrote on the doors of Samaria, Achav denies the existence of the God of Israel, therefore he has no share in the God of Israel. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, get them in now. And I'm going to have to cut it off pretty quickly. With regard to the verse, and he sought Achaziah, and they apprehended him, for he was hiding in Samaria. Rabbi Levi says, what would he do in hiding? He would excise mentions of God's name in Torah scrolls and write the name of an object of idol worship in their stead, in a Torah. And the Gemara proceeds to discuss the third king enumerated in the Mishna, and he was called Menashe, that we've been talking about, because he forgot, Nasha Yah, Alternatively, he was called Menashe because he caused the kingdom of Israel to forget Hinshi, their father was in heaven. And from where do we derive that Menashe does not enter into the world to come? And the Gemara answers, it is derived as it is written, Menashe was 12 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, and he made an Asherah, as did Achav, king of Israel. Just as Achav has no share in the world to come, so too Menashe has no share in the world to come. Bill says, gee, Sal, don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. And Tom says, great men can do more damage than the rest of us. Just so. Just so. You guys having a good conversation amongst yourselves. And Aoife says, of the multitude of ways one might use gifts given by God, why should any reasonable person expect one to use it for idolatry? Also, why discourage God from his generosity by chiding God for that? You talk about what Moses was being chutzpahdik, telling God, why give people, you gave them so much gold and silver. But Moses was trying to save the people, and apparently his argument worked. But no, we have to accept all this responsibility on ourselves, and we never should think that we're above any kind of sin. We have to guard ourselves continuously, constantly, against falling into transgression. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again on Tuesday. The next class is Tuesday. We have Shabbos tomorrow. Passover begins Saturday night. First 2 days of Passover are full holiday, Sunday and Monday. We're not going to have a class on Monday night, just a little too challenging. So the next class is Tuesday. Tuesday at the regular Tuesday time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Good Shabbos, good Yom Tif, Hag Sameach. You should have a Passover that is joyful and kosher. Kosher means you should be healthy and not be forced to eat some kind of chametz because of your health. So when we say Chag Kasher v'Sameach, it means you should be rejoicing and be healthy in this Passover. All the best.